Hello and welcome to our Friday Digest series. Thanks so much for being here. I'm Rebecca Rear, the Director of Climate Policy and Justice here at Maryland LCV. Our goal with these Friday Digests is to provide you with information, tools, and resources to be an informed and active advocate. Being with us for our weekly digest speaks to the power of our community and to your commitment to the solutions that will create a healthy environment for everyone in Maryland. As you join, please type your name in the chat, tell us where you're joining from, and as we move through the half an hour we have together today, please type your questions and comments in the Q&A or the chat box, and we will certainly get to as many as we can to help shape today's conversation. We always want the agenda for these virtual meetings to be driven by your interests and needs, so please let us know what you want to hear. The best and easiest way to do that is to fill out the survey that you will receive at the end of the session. So make sure you look out for that link in the chat a little bit later. Today's session is especially timely as the Maryland Senate just held its hearing on the Reclaim Renewable Energy Act in the Education, Energy, and the Environment Committee, fondly known as EEE. All of our guests were up late for the hearing, and so we're so grateful they could join us today. The Reclaim Renewable Energy Act would remove municipal solid waste incineration from the state's Renewable Energy Portfolio Standard, or RPS. So if you hear that among the alphabet soup today, that's what we're referring to, making more state incentives and investments available for clean, renewable energy. For today's digest, I'm thrilled to be joined by two representatives of the South Baltimore Community Land Trust, a community-led organization that works with people directly impacted by environmental, economic, and racial injustice to ensure they are in the lead to create development that regenerates our communities and our planet. Please welcome Shashawnda Campbell and Toby Harris. Hi, Shashawnda and Toby. We're also joined by Jennifer Kunze from Clean Water Action, which works to win strong health and environmental protections by bringing issue expertise and people power to the table. Welcome, Jennifer. So for those of you who have joined our Friday Digest in the past, this probably isn't the first time you've heard about efforts to update and modernize the state's renewable energy portfolio standard. In 2011, Maryland added waste incineration to the state's RPS, receiving the same credits as truly renewable energy like wind and solar. Burning trash is a major contributor to toxic air pollution in surrounding communities, leading to significantly negative health impacts and higher costs for already overburdened and underserved communities. Efforts to remove this energy source from the state RPS have been made year after year, and with renewed momentum to get it done this year, with it being a recommendation from the Maryland Commission on Climate Change and in the state's climate pollution reduction plan, we're hoping to see the bill move by the end of session. As the Senate sponsor, Senator Karen Lewis Young said yesterday, let this be lucky number 13. So Shashawnda and Toby, I want to start with you. Can you tell us your story? How did you first get involved working on clean energy? And Shashawnda, why don't we start with you?
I want to say thank you everybody for being here and welcome to the space. I started in this work when I was a part of a group called Free Your Voice that I helped start back in my high school years, that stopped an incinerator that was proposed to be in Curtis Bay, with a lot of the facilities like the one we were talking about, the Bresco incinerator that's in the South Baltimore. And we have been taking multiple different streams of trying to stop incineration, and also just trying to call it out for not being renewable energy, which it is classified as right now. And so I made my way into this space, and it's a space, you can't get out of until you have success. And so still here.
Hi there, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining. I had met Shashawnda back in 2019, Jennifer as well. And like she said so clearly, once you get involved, you don't really easily get out of this work. I was an environmental health, public health student, and really just the real world applications. Like Rebecca was saying, there's, health impacts that come from these incinerators, but there's also, climate changing, climate warming impacts as well from those chemicals too. So really just kind of like Shashawnda said, working towards our future, what we're imagining, kind of greener, healthier, and cleaner. But again, really appreciate y'all joining us today.
Thanks, Toby. We have that in common, the public health background as well. And sort of that's why there was lead in the pipes in my high school. So, we find ourselves here today, right? So to the two of you again, what was your take home after the hearing yesterday? Sort of what's your feeling after the hearing? And yesterday's hearing was in the Senate. How are you already thinking about the House hearing? I know the hearing date hasn't been announced yet, but sort of taking those learnings from yesterday and looking towards the House hearing.
Yeah, I can. Well, Toby, do you want to start? I mean, you were in person, so you probably have a better.
I mean, yeah, I think kind of the energy in the room was definitely something that we were, talking about and just thinking, how do we, really kind of capture, I guess, the amount of support that was there, both in person and obviously that's been flooding in virtually and online. Shashawnda, I didn't have immediate reactions that I was kind of, I guess, our colleague Carlos Sanchez put it very clearly that ratepayers are tired, and again, kind of the time has come. So I guess just the momentum this year, we're really excited. But Shashawnda, I don't know your immediate reactions, kind of thinking about, like Rebecca said, the House hearing hasn't been scheduled yet, so kind of our actions and priorities in the meanwhile.
Yeah, I think that this hearing was really good with the support, like you said. I think this hearing also just put us back in that discussion of like health impacts, closing down the incineration, which I think is very clearly to say that this particular bill is not going to close them down. And so trying to like stay away from that conversation as much as possible. So then it's not like they're voting to shut down their incinerator, but they're actually talking about taking away credits they should have never received. I think it was also, one of the representatives that spoke from Wind Waste actually said something that was really funny to me, which was just about, like we were putting here because we're better than the other dirty sources of energy. And I was just like, so you're comparing to dirty sources of energy when we're saying you're not renewable and clean, it's just making you look worse. So I honestly thought that was just like ironic, and I think it was good for them to actually say that, especially on the record, that they're comparing themselves to things like landfilling, right? They're not comparing themselves to wind and solar, which is what we were talking about a lot in our testimonies. And so for them to just acknowledge that they're not on that level, to me, was really good. I think for the House hearing, just pushing as much as possible for more support at city levels, and just getting as many people as possible to come out from those different local governments to say like they are standing behind residents, which came out in support. Many organizations supported this, and that was really good. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And I want to lift up something you said, which is the bill takes trash incineration out of the renewable portfolio standard. It does not. So that's what the bill does. And so that was reiterated several times during the hearing to make it very clear. And I just want to make it clear for everyone tuning in, the bill, that's what it does. It takes out the state incentives through the renewable energy credits, not to go to trash incineration anymore. That's what it does. And so that's like I said, that was reiterated several times to make that point very clear yesterday. And yesterday, the hearing, there were 9 bills on the committee hearing list. 11 bills on the list. So and it was put last. So that always makes people a little nervous because you got to get through all the bills before you get to yours. And it usually indicates there's a long list of folks to testify. Some people do have to leave before your bill gets called up. And so I think there was a little bit, that's not atypical for this bill. We've seen that before, but it seemed like folks were still, the committee was still very engaged at that, even at the lateness of the hour. I think everything was wrapped up by about 7 p.m. So not the latest night in Annapolis by far, but the bill was put at the end of the list for the hearings yesterday. But I think in general that the energy was still really good during the hearing, and no questions to trip anybody up, which sometimes we see. So Jennifer, Senator Lewis Young, who's the Senate sponsor of the bill, yesterday mentioned that there were about 4 times as many favorable testimonies submitted as unfavorable, and we saw that reflected in the panels. There were several more panels of positive of proponents, and then 1 panel of opponents. So that sounds great, and like the wind's behind us on this one. So what's your take on that, and what does the what hurdles does the bill face in passing, and sort of what do folks tuning in now need to do?
The balance of testimony and of support yesterday was really striking, where there were several panels of supporters and only one panel of opposition. 70 some individual written testimonies submitted in support. 81 organizations signed on to big group sign-on testimony. And of course, we know we have the Maryland Department of the Environment support as well. Within the climate pollution reduction plan, very specifically, there's discussion of future renewable energy planning, of potential clean power standard, and discussion of developing the details of that over the next little bit. But the one and only change to the RPS that was specifically proactively endorsed in the state's new climate pollution reduction plan was taking trash out of the RPS and making sure trash incineration stays out of any future renewable energy programs. So I think there's really a lot behind the bill this year and a lot going for it. I'll mention we have also the support. Montgomery County government was on our sponsor panel. Montgomery County directly receives the subsidies from the RPS for the incinerator out in Dickerson, Maryland. And it's a pretty significant amount of money. It's $8 million that Montgomery County government received in 2022 because of trash incineration being in the RPS. And Montgomery County government still very strongly affirms that trash incineration doesn't belong in the RPS. And there's some conversations happening about what exactly is the best timeline for the bill to be implemented on to make sure that we can make this change and be investing in renewable energy development and not wasting this money on trash incineration, but just make that transition in an orderly fashion that works for the local governments. But that, I think, is a positive conversation, and we're excited to be having it. And we're really very close. And so I think the main thing that folks on this call need to do is lift up your voices very loud. This bill just has to be an environmental priority this year. This is the year to pass it for a lot of reasons, especially the state of the state budget. We're facing deficits and shortfalls, and this bill is a really great way to make tens of millions of dollars of new investments in actually renewable energy, wind and solar, by just switching the money away from trash incineration towards that. And that will make so much more money available without costing the state budget a cent, which is really, really important this year. And so I think that message just needs to get loud and clear to our legislative leaders in the Senate and in the House, and really demonstrate that there is unanimous support and very little opposition, except for the companies that are profiting from this subsidy, who naturally are going to be opposed.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I would point out that there's an action alert in the chat now, so you can go over there, click on that, and let Senate hearing just happen. So you can let your senator know today how much you support this legislation. The action alert is ready to go. You can also personalize it if you'd like to write a personal note in the field. And so anything that you hear today that's particularly compelling or interesting, definitely you can tailor that message and write into your senator today. So we have that action alert available to take action right now. As you just heard from Jennifer, your senator needs to hear from you. So make your voice heard on this one. So I do want to pick up on the last thing you said, which is some of the opposition. You know, we did see several folks in the hearing room who work at the incinerator facilities. There was the one panel of folks in opposition, but they brought folks with them who work at these facilities and said, you know, could everyone who's joining me from these facilities please stand up? And we saw folks stand up in uniforms. And so, you know, folks do stand to lose their jobs if this impacts the financial viability of these facilities. So I just want to talk a little bit about a just transition and what we're thinking, how you all are thinking about supporting workers in a just transition because we want these investments to go to truly renewable energy. And in doing so, recognize the need to support folks who work in industries that for the health and well-being of Marylanders do need to be phased out. So how are you all thinking about a just transition and talking about that in your work?
Yeah, well, I think it's in the conversation at the hearing yesterday, it's always very important to still remember, as we've said, that this bill does not shut the incinerator down. In the case of Bresco here in Baltimore, it's $2 million in some in 2020, $4 million in some in 2022. That would be revenue that they received from the RPS that they no longer would be receiving. But incinerators have multiple revenue streams, from the tipping fees that they charge to dump waste there, to the sale of the actual electricity, which is separate from the sale of renewable energy credits. And these are also very powerful multinational companies. So it's, yeah, always important to remember that this bill doesn't shut the incinerator down. But ultimately, we also, it's no mystery. Everybody knows that ultimately we don't think that incineration should be in Maryland's future. And I know SBCLT has really been doing a lot of the leading on what does come next. So I'll turn it over to y'all.
Yeah, and thanks, Jennifer, for that, because that was my first thought. I think, and we've seen this play out, this conversation of war on jobs versus the health impacts that's happening in community. People shouldn't have to sacrifice their lives for people to have a job, and people shouldn't have to work jobs that sacrificing people's lives to also live, right? And so it's a chicken and the egg situation, as you can tell from the panel, the opposition panel that spoke, one of the employees that spoke from the Wind Waste, and then also you also heard from community residents from Cherry Hill, Westport, right, that talked about the health impacts that they see: cancer, upper respiratory issues. And so it's also not fair to say you should sacrifice your life, right? And so, of course, when we think about this, we are thinking about both sides. And so we always talk about a just transition, and moving to zero waste, and looking at how we're dealing with waste and acknowledging that we're not dealing with it in the right way. Even Baltimore City has taken leadership around this and saying, like, we should not be using this incinerator, and we should not sign another contract with this incinerator. And then looking for things like composting, right? How do we take the food waste that's being also burnt and buried, creating methane, CO2 when it's being burnt, methane when it's being buried, that can be composted? It makes no sense, right? It's just like, I think half of our jobs is make common sense common, right? It's to do the things that we all know we should do. And composting, to be fair, creates way more jobs. As you guys heard last night, they even admitted themselves, they have 80 employees. 80 employees is nothing compared to 3 times the amount of jobs that you're going to create, and even just composting alone, right? And reuse, and so those create more jobs. Most of the jobs that's being done at the incinerators honestly don't take a lot of strength to transition into doing something else. Most of them are hauling jobs. You're still hauling with composting. It's just hauling to a different location. And so we always talk about how do we meet workers where they are and help them in that transition to this system that we are building out, because it's going to happen. It's going to happen regardless. Our environment needs it, and the health of people need it. And so we shouldn't even be sacrificing our planet. As you heard, these greenhouse gases are real. Our planet is warming. It's not okay. And we have to do as much proactive steps as we can, as we see in all these different state plans that's coming out, including the MDE one. So we just have to make it very clear, this is not a war on jobs. And this bill definitely ain't a war on jobs, because this bill is not shutting this incinerator down, period. They have worked and operated before getting these wrecks, and they're going to work and operate and fight their hardest, like they did last night, with all these employees coming, to keep that income streams that they have and build more. And so essentially, we are fighting a beast. And we have to acknowledge that they are a multi-million company, and we are residents, and we are not even making $1 million. So, yeah, it's a big industry. This is going to take time. This is just one way of acknowledging that this industry is dirty. It's not clean. It's not renewable, and it should never been receiving these recs. And I think they acknowledge that themselves in comparing themselves to landfilling when we're talking about wind and solar. So yeah, that's my thoughts around it. It's not a war on their jobs. We would love to work with them and talk about how they even see themselves fitting into this transition. And and say, you know, we want to see your families fed also. We don't want to take food out of anybody's family mouths. And we want to create new systems, because one of the things he said last night was they helped us in COVID when we didn't have anything, right? There should never be a time that people don't have anything. So we just need to build out a better system where these companies can't just come in and swoop in and say, I'm your hero, and I'm also going to be your enemy by sacrificing your health. So yeah, that's my thoughts. I'll stop there because I know it's a short webinar and I can go on a tangent.
I mean, I think Shashawnda said most of what there is to say. It's kind of the intentionality of the just transition, working with workers. And again, what this bill is and is not, it is not, you know, attacking workers directly by any means. It's not shutting these facilities down. It's taking away these extra surplus profits that were never supposed to be going to them in the first place. Like Shashawnda has made very clear, again, it's not you know, this overwhelming idea to think that burning trash is not renewable and it should not be getting these credits. So I think that really is it.
And I just have to say to everybody, our job is to make common sense common. I really, Shashawnda, that's gonna go up on a wall somewhere. As like, you know, I always say in public health, we're always trying to work ourselves out of a job, right? And public health is systems level thinking and looking at the population level in terms of, you know, health and all policies and looking at upstream solutions. And so we're always trying to work ourselves out of a job, right? If everybody's healthy, well, you know, I'm out. But as long as we have air pollution issues to work on, you know, I'm employed. So that's yeah. So I just so resonate with the make common sense common, make the healthy choice the easy choice. Can't say that. I want to ask a little bit about there's a lot of federal investment coming in right now from the federal government, specifically for clean energy infrastructure. Are there implications for the state of Maryland and clean energy investments if there are sources like trash in the RPS? Like, what are the implications for additional federal dollars coming in to invest in clean energy or renewable energy when trash is included in that definition? Just thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point and a really great question, and really an important one of the many reasons why this bill should pass this year. We're already wasting too much money on trash incineration, and even with the existing system, that problem is getting worse. The amount of money going to trash incinerators has really ballooned in the last couple of years just because of the market-based system that's the sort of practical way that this subsidy system works. And so we're already wasting increasing amounts of money on trash incineration. And in terms of our future investments in the RPS and our future investments through other state programs and through federal grants and investments, we just cannot afford to keep wasting money on trash incineration. The climate can't afford it. We need every dollar that we can spend to be going to building actual renewable energy that doesn't emit CO2 like trash incineration does. And so I think that just puts a really fine point on now is the time to fix this problem.
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. And we actually got a question in from John for South Baltimore Community Land Trust. I heard a few years ago that SBCLT was pushing for the development of a zero waste campus in South Baltimore. Has there been progress towards that amazing vision?
Yeah, we definitely were. We were looking to actually get the compost facility that I was just talking about. We got the city to apply for sorry, some of that federal funding that you were talking about, Rebecca. And they actually did get some of that. And they're using it for composting and a facility to be created in Baltimore City. So that was a really big win. We're still, of course, ironing out details and trying to make sure it actually happens, right? In a real way that's tangible for people to see. We wanted that to be in South Baltimore, but because of like the land and all of it, like I said, South Baltimore is composed of so many polluting facilities. It takes a lot of remediation for these lands, and some of it can't even host any facilities, honestly. And so the plots that we were looking at has a hard time like hosting some of these facilities. It's like 64 acres, and only a certain amount of those acres are actually valuable to be used. So we're still working on that. And we're still pushing for the goals, of course, to like have that transition happen. We're sad that it's not in Curtis Bay, but we're still happy it's happening. So we're still pushing for that type of seeing those different developments. It's just haven't flourished in the way that we wanted it to.
And this isn't the full zero waste campus that SBCLT has been working toward, but there is something coming up near me. I'm in East Baltimore, and the city is moving forward with building a compost facility, the city's first at-scale, large at-scale compost facility up here in East Baltimore on Bowley's Lane. So there is progress happening. There's more progress coming, and we'll get that zero waste campus out of dreams and into reality soon.
Yeah, so Jennifer and them got it and we didn't. But it's happening and we're all happy. We're all neighbors in the same city, experiencing the same air, trying to fight back. So we're super excited that it's happening.
Yeah, turns out air does not respect jurisdictional boundaries. So
not at all.
All right, we're approaching the end of our time here, so I think we're going to do some rapid fire style questions. So I think do you know, do other states include trash in their renewable portfolio standards?
Other states do. It's really a mix across the country in different states' RPSs.
Okay.
Maryland needs to be a climate leader. Well, it won't be a leader. Lots of states don't, but needs to be a climate middle of the pack.
Yeah. So on this one, yeah. And it's how we would maintain, passing the Climate Solutions Now Act really did put Maryland at the head of the pack in terms of the most ambitious greenhouse gas emissions reductions, short-term goals in the nation. And then as part of that, wrote this climate pollution reduction plan and, fulfilling the legislative recommendations like trash out of the RPS in that plan. I think Jennifer, to your point, keeps Maryland in a leadership position, and I think that's an important point if anybody wants to add that into your action alert. I think are you any other climate goal visions for you? Like sort of let's end on a positive note. Get trash out is sort of a one specific action, but like what's a healthy climate vision for you? Let's go around and hear from each of you before we close out.
I feel like we might have similar answers, but I'm going to say compost. I think there's so many different reasons to compost, and one of them is that it actually sequesters carbon in the soil, draws down carbon and puts it in the soil, even beyond avoiding the CO2 emissions from incinerators and the methane emissions from landfills. There's a lot of work going on at the local level here in Baltimore, at the state level in Annapolis. There's another bill about investing in composting systems and creating a dedicated funding source for composting systems. And that's another bill that should pass, and we need to compost and keep that carbon in the ground.
Shashawnda.
Yeah, I was gonna say to add to it, I think composting, like Jennifer already said, but I think it's also acknowledging that even in the RPS, there is still a lot of other things that have to come out that's not healthy. We're attacking this one this year and hoping we are successful. And then there's a lot of other things, dirty sources that needs to also come out to actually clean up this RPS to make sure that all of those different dollars, all those federal dollars that's coming down does not go to these same systems, but are going to actually build the systems that we need, because right now they're getting the leg up that the systems that we are looking to like build that we need for this just transition to even reach all these different goals that's in these plans. We have to have money. So I think Jennifer hit on it earlier. We have the money. We just have to dedicate it to these things. And so getting us to that leg of the race, I think is just a beautiful goal. And I think it'll set us up for the things like composting and acknowledging it's how valuable it is. Reuse, building those systems. Everything is not trash, but if you have an incinerator, everything looks like it should be burnt. And so we have to build new systems.
Toby.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with Jennifer about just composting as a low-hanging fruit. The youth, especially with the land trust and for your voice, some have emphasized that. And, you know, with restaurants and home composting, there's something that's very easy to pull out. I also want to highlight the youth have a group called Broken Glass, and glass in the waste stream is also something that can be pulled out. It's an infinite resource that can be melted and shaped into art. So really, again, the youth that we work with and that are leading these efforts are, again, calling the charge for compost and glass and other easy options we can pull out. Again, just looking forward at our waste streams. But I know we're at time. So again, really appreciate everyone's time. And thanks, Rebecca.
Thanks so much. Supporting the youth is a huge part of our climate future. And I always thought there was a huge barrier for composting. I was like, oh God, how am I going to do this? During the pandemic, I took a giant Fisher's popcorn bucket, because nobody should have that much popcorn at once, and put it on my counter and started throwing my banana peels in there. And that's composting. I started composting with a plastic bucket I already had in the house. No, so just take out those mental barriers and get started today, everybody. So that's all the time we have for today. As we wrap up, I just want to thank Shashawnda, Toby, and Jennifer for joining us today. Thank you so much for your dedication to this work, for your time today, for all of your insight you shared. To our audience, thank you all for joining us and for your support in our work. If you have questions that were not answered today, you can always send them to us by email and one of our team will get back to you. And before we leave, we just have a few upcoming events we'd like to share. Stay tuned for an email about our next Friday Digest. Join us every Friday at noon, same place. We do hope you could join again for another informative session. And finally, the environmental community is hosting its 2024 Maryland Environmental Legislative Summit on January 31st, next Wednesday, this coming Wednesday. A link to the information is being provided in the chat. We hope it's the first time we're doing it in person in several years. U.S. Senator Ben Cardin is the keynote speaker. Expecting a lot of other elected leaders. Sign up, free to attend, Graduate Hotel, Annapolis, Maryland, 6 p.m. on Wednesday. See you there. Hopefully see you everywhere. Have a great weekend, everybody. Keep it up. See you soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.